most people struggle to overcome emotional eating and binge eating because they approach it in the wrong way. For well over 90% of people, it's not that they have bad habits or that they're undisciplined. It's actually because they struggle with trauma and accumulated stress, which is stored in their body, making it impossible for them to establish a healthy relationship with food. In this video, I'm going to show you how you can release these traumas and break free from emotional eating and binge eating for good. I'm Lori Montry, trauma-informed eating psychology coach. I support people in overcoming their challenges with food and weight through a multidisciplinary approach that uses the latest research in neuroplasticity, behavior change, somatic experiencing, and more. For me, freedom is not teaching you how to harness your willpower and control. It's about healing and transforming so that you don't think about food unless you're truly hungry. No matter who you are and how long you've struggled with food and weight, freedom is possible for you. Now, I've got lots to share in this video with you, but before we get started, please hit the subscribe button so I can get more valuable content to you and others who need information and support on their food challenges. Now, as I said, most people who struggle with emotional and binge eating have tried everything to stop their behavior. I know what this is like because I literally tried anything and everything I could get my hands on to overcome my own challenges with food. I, like many of you I'm sure, tried dozens of different diets, fasting and restriction. Many of the people I've worked with have undergone gastric bypass surgery. It seems that there is no sacrifice too big to stop the frustrating and sometimes terrifying cycle of emotional and binge eating. No matter how big the sacrifice, the results are always the same. They might work for a short time and even produce some weight loss, but for one reason or another, the behavior comes back. And so does the weight, the frustration, and the despair. So it's time to stop putting your effort into control, restriction, and shame, and put it into what will work to change your behavior for good. Now, in order to understand the solution for binge and emotional eating, we have to understand the roots of the challenge. The research is very clear in linking accumulated stress and trauma with food and weight challenges. I recently attended a conference in which Gabor Mate, who's the author of When the Body Says No and the more recent bestseller, The Myth of Normal, stated that he's not yet met a person challenged by binge eating who hadn't experienced trauma. Eating, it's a very useful coping mechanism when it's formed. It meets an important need, right? It makes perfect sense why we would develop these patterns with food, but with the right understanding and tools, we can learn other, more adaptive and supportive ways to deal with life's challenges. So let's start with an understanding of trauma and how it relates to your relationship with food. Traditionally, we're taught that trauma is only experienced with really, truly catastrophic events like being in a natural disaster, living in a war zone, or being a victim of sexual, physical, or emotional abuse. And while trauma can and often does result from horrific experiences like these, it is certainly not limited to these types of events. I really want to start out by asking you to give up any preconceived notions about what trauma is. The definition is probably much broader than you're currently thinking. The simplest way that we define trauma is that it is something that overwhelms the nervous system of the individual beyond what it can handle in that moment. Obviously, for different people, it will look vastly different. What's traumatic to me may not be to another, depending on many factors that we don't have to go into today, but just know there's no definition of what trauma is other than the fact that it was an event that overwhelmed the nervous system of the particular individual. Trauma is also not always one thing. Events and experiences can build over time. And that's why two people can experience the exact same thing and one is deeply affected and the other is not. It's also why from the outside, we can never decide what registers for someone else as a trauma. Now, I've done other videos that go into more depth on the types of traumas, but for now, just know that there are many ways in which we experience trauma and accumulated stress. I've provided a link to my Weight of Trauma masterclass that does provide a deeper conversation about the three main types of trauma and how that impacts our relationship with food. I want to share with you a quote by Peter Levine, and he is one of the leaders in understanding and treating trauma. He says, "Trauma is a fact of life. It does not, however, have to be a life sentence. Not only can trauma be healed, but with appropriate appropriate guidance and support, it can be transformative. Trauma has the potential to be one of the most significant forces for psychological, social, and spiritual awakening and evolution. How we handle trauma as individuals, communities, and societies greatly influences the quality of our lives. Now we'll say that trauma affects everyone differently, right? Some individuals clearly display symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder, but many more individuals will have symptoms that don't meet the criteria for PTSD, but nonetheless greatly impact the quality of their lives. Trauma affects our health in a myriad of ways. It affects our motivation, our ability to be connected and authentic. It affects our relationships, our ability to concentrate, learn, and work, our ability to make conscious choice, and much more. In essence, people living with unresolved trauma have a nervous system that is stuck in high alert. Your brain's developed to help them survive by keeping them hypervigilant to their surroundings and ready to react to threats quickly. And this means that they feel endangered or triggered very easily and more often. Circumstances and experiences simply feel bigger and more triggering to a person whose nervous system is overloaded. They may startle easily, or something like needing to step on their brakes quickly might leave them feeling shaken for a while. Maybe you recognize this for yourself. It also means that you may feel the need to comfort, calm, and regulate yourself often, and food is a quick and easy way to do that. This explains why you turn to food when you're feeling stressed or other unpleasant emotions. When your nervous system is in survival mode, you're operating from your primal brain or your survival brain, which is only concerned about survival in the next 2 minutes. It's not concerned about how you're going to feel about your decisions in an hour. It just wants you alive in an hour. Your survival brain doesn't have access to your good ideas, your creativity, or your long-term goals. So as long as your survival brain is the driver of your car, you're going to go straight through the drive-through every single time. Without the use of your higher brain, you become a creature of habit, right? Conscious choice, invention, innovation, discovery, wonder, all of those things are lacking with survival brain. In people who have experienced trauma, that critical balance between the alarm-sounding amygdala of the lower brain and the prefrontal cortex shifts radically. And that's why people have a much harder time controlling their emotions and impulses. Understanding this, you can clearly see that one of the biggest keys to overcoming emotional and binge eating is healing past trauma and learning to harness the power of your nervous system to switch out of survival and into your higher functioning self. It's the higher brain that stops your hand when you're reaching for chips or ice cream and asks, do I really want this? Or is this just an impulse that will pass in a few minutes? Understanding these challenges helps you realize what's happening in that triggered moment. When you find yourself eating food that you told yourself you weren't going to eat, it also helps you realize that you're not a weak person that lacks willpower. You are literally wired at this point in a way that makes it extremely difficult to make different choices with respect to food. By learning to heal your nervous system, self-regulate, and self-soothe, you'll find that you get triggered less often, and even if you do, you'll be better able to stay connected to your higher brain, stay conscious, and make new choices. You can achieve this goal through practices like somatic experiencing, learning to self-soothe, creating new neurological pathways that give you options when you're in a triggered state. You can experience your emotions and allow them to pass through you without needing things outside of you, without needing food. Healing past trauma is learning to work with your nervous system through practices like somatic experiencing is fundamental in helping you overcome emotional and binge eating. So with all this in mind, I want to offer you 3 simple but important ways to start bringing somatic experiencing into your daily life. The first step is going to sound crazy and maybe even scary to you, and that is to stop focusing on the food. Stop trying to figure out how to eat, what to eat, how to control yourself in that whole conversation. The reason this is the first step is because if that's where your head is, that's where your energy is going. This conversation is also stressful for you, which further activates your nervous system. And remember, when your nervous system is activated, you're much more likely to need food to soothe and support you. So just for a little while, make a commitment to take your time, energy, and focus off your battle with food and put it on supporting your nervous system. The second step is to become aware of your nervous system and your physical sensations. Take a few minutes, at least 2 or 3 times a day, to stop, notice what you're feeling. Notice the state of your nervous system. Are you feeling calm and relaxed, ready for life experiences? If so, you're in your parasympathetic state. If you feel like there's too much going on, you're on high alert, or like you're surrounded by tigers that you need to run away from, you're in your sympathetic state. In this state, you feel mobilized and on edge. Or maybe you're feeling more overwhelmed, shut down, or frozen. This would indicate you're in your dorsal vagal or your freeze state. In this state, you want to climb under the bed and hide. By tuning in and noticing where you are throughout the day, you'll be gathering important information about your system and your state of being. The third step is to notice where you're feeling sensations in your body and provide support to that area of your body through focus and touch. So imagine you're doing one of your check-ins with yourself and you notice you're really in that sympathetic mode, right? And when you check in with your physical sensations, you may notice that your breath feels shallow or you have a pit in your stomach. Focus on that sensation and find a way to support your body. If you're noticing shallow breath, take a moment to slow down your breathing, deepen the breath, letting it naturally expand and fill your chest. If you notice a pit in your stomach, you could place one or both hands there, left over right, or right over left. See if you can find a place where it feels loving and supportive. You could also try holding a pillow there or something warm. Stay with the sensation. Perhaps even listen for a message or a request from the sensation, and send loving and supportive energy to that area of the body. Now, there's 3 important points that I always stress when working with the nervous system in this way. And that is, number 1, what I'm sharing with you is the very tip of the iceberg in somatic experiencing and how you can use it to overcome binge eating and emotional eating, how you can use it to start to release trauma. There's so much more available to you. With the right support and guidance, you can use somatic work to completely change your relationship with food, heal from trauma, and change your life. I have some free resources available to you on this topic, so be sure to visit the video description for the link to those resources. The second thing I want to mention with respect to somatic work is that you may struggle getting in touch with your body sensations, or your body sensations may feel extremely difficult to embrace. For those of us who have learned to shut down from the body because the sensations felt too intense, it can be hard to bring awareness to them. And it can be hard to locate your emotions in the body. And it can be very hard to sit with those uncomfortable sensations. This is one of the main keys that I teach in the Freedom from Emotional Eating course. I know it's challenging for many of us. I lived cut off from my body for almost all of my life until I started doing this work. It was such a normalized experience for me that I didn't even know that I was cut off from my body until I did the work to get re-embodied. If you find this work is too intense to be in your body, or you can't seem to access sensations, know that you're not alone. This is common. Do your best with it and look for other resources on my channel and in my free resources offered below, just to help you start to build an internal connection and safety. Just don't give up. And lastly, I want to encourage you not to wait until your system is screaming out to check in and support it. If you wait until you're in full-blown survival mode, it's going to be a lot more challenging to connect and support. That's one of the reasons I recommend having those regular set times to check in. By doing so, you'll have a much better chance of keeping your system from going into survival in the first place. This is where your power lies. Now, even though we've covered a lot of information in this video, I hope you walk away with a few points that can begin to change your relationship with food. Number 1, due to past traumas and accumulated stress from your everyday environment, many are living in survival mode. We weren't engineered to live in survival for extended periods of time. We were meant to shift in and back out of survival mode relatively quickly. The second thing I want you to take away is that when we stay stuck in survival mode, we look to quick, easy things outside of us to feel better quickly, right? Food, shopping, scrolling, TV, gambling, on and on. And the third thing is, by setting aside the battle with food and your behavior, you can put energy into using tools like somatic experiencing, which can powerfully shift your state and put you back in control. When you're in your parasympathetic state of calm aliveness, you don't need food and other coping mechanisms or avoidance behaviors. At that point, it doesn't occur to you to eat food when you aren't hungry. This is freedom, true freedom. You will not gain freedom through control and willpower. It will be gained by becoming embodied. Now, as I said, we're scratching the surface with this conversation, but be sure to download the free gift series to learn more and start your journey to freedom.